Welcome to your meeting with ICM. The interpretation button should appear at the bottom of your screen, next to the Share Screen button. By clicking on the interpretation button, you can choose the language you would like to hear. The interpretation button will then transform this meeting into the selected language. To change the language you would like to hear again, follow the previous procedure by clicking on that same button. By default, you will hear the selected language at 80% volume and the original audio at 20% volume. If you would like to mute or unmute the original audio, click on the corresponding option within the language button. Enjoy your meeting. Bienvenue à votre réunion avec l'ICM. Comme la réunion propose une interprétation simultanée en français, le bouton Interprétation devrait apparaître en bas de votre écran à côté du bouton Partager l'écran. En cliquant sur le bouton Interprétation, vous pouvez choisir la langue que vous souhaitez entendre. Le bouton Interprétation se transforme alors en la langue sélectionnée. Pour changer à nouveau la langue que vous souhaitez entendre, suivez la procédure précédente en cliquant sur le même bouton. Par défaut, vous entendrez la langue sélectionnée à 80% de volume et l'audio original à 20% de volume. Si vous souhaitez couper ou supprimer l'audio original, cliquez sur l'option correspondante dans le bouton de la langue. Bonne réunion. Bienvenido a su reunión de la ICM. Como la reunión ofrece interpretación simultánea en español, el botón Interpretación debería aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla, junto al botón Compartir pantalla. Haciendo clic en el botón Interpretación, puede elegir el idioma que desea escuchar. El botón Interpretación cambia entonces al idioma seleccionado. Para volver a cambiar el idioma que desea escuchar, siga el procedimiento anterior pulsando el mismo botón. Por defecto, oirás el idioma seleccionado a un 80% de volumen y el audio original a un 20%. Si quieres silenciar o desilenciar el audio original, haz clic en la opción correspondiente del botón de idioma. Disfruta de su reunión.
Warm greetings to all, and thank you for joining us in your morning, afternoon and evening time. On behalf of AIME, the Alliance to Improve Midwifery Education, we welcome you to the 6th webinar of this series. We've only got one more to go, where we explore the WHO 7-step action plan to strengthen quality midwifery education. And today's session, we explore step 6, educate students. I'm Felicity Copeland, midwifery consultant from UNFPA headquarters, and I'm joined today by my colleague and friend, Anna Af-Uglas, who is the current chair for AIME and is the midwifery education lead for LADEL. And Anna has had extensive experience working in the field in many parts of the globe and is currently working on some very innovative ways to enhance clinical simulation learning for midwifery education. Welcome, Anna. And we are supported, as usual, by the wonderful Bruna Bimbato from ICM, who is hosting this platform from Brazil, and the equally wonderful Shisato Masuda from UNFPA headquarters. And a very special thank you to our hardworking interpreters on behalf of our Spanish, French, and Arabic-speaking midwifery colleagues. I'm calling from Japan, and it's the early evening, and I can hear, and I hope you can too, lots of crickets outside, which is really nice. That's what that buzz is. I can't turn it off. So a quick recap on our last session that we had together, where we heard from expert speakers about faculty development and the programs that have been effective in supporting faculty's capacity to teach. And we provided links to the Burnett Institute online program, as well as the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. And we heard from the Philippines Association of Midwives, who adapted and implemented their own faculty development program, having completed the Burnett program. So it's a wonderful training, a TOT model. We also heard from an educator in Zambia about the robust ways to ensure that curriculum meets national and ICM standards. And this is really important by doing an ongoing review process involving multiple stakeholders. And also very importantly, we heard about maintaining close relationships between the faculty and the clinical preceptors on site. So I am now going to hand over to Anna to introduce step 6 and to run through a few poll questions before introducing our first speaker. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Felicity, and warm welcome to everyone to this 6th webinar. Now, today in this webinar, we are going to focus on the students, meaning the 6th step, educate students. We want to focus on the importance of providing stimulating, relevant, evidence-based midwifery education in a way that is accessible to students. We want educators to be able to inspire and motivate the students in their learning pathway, and this means that the faculty needs to be well supported and have sufficient professional development opportunities, and as well access to innovative teaching resources. It is also very important how we prepare the students to enter the clinical sites, and we will be looking at that today. Now, the WHO Framework for Action advises that faculty rethink the way that they teach midwifery. We need to make sure that the teachers and the clinical preceptors collaborate in a wide range with a wide range of stakeholders and healthcare providers so that they work in teams and include multidisciplinary approach to education. This is exciting. The fundamental to this is it's modeling a right-based, respectful midwifery philosophy, placing women at the center of care, and to ensure that students' attitude and behaviors reflect this. So let's start by examining step 6, by asking 3 poll questions to all of you to gain an understanding of who you are on this call. So Bruna, please, could you put up the poll, please? You will see 3 questions. And the first one is a yes or no question. Are you involved in clinical teaching in the simulated environment? So yes, no, or I'm not sure. The second one is, in your opinion, have you received adequate training to support your simulated teaching? You can only choose yes, no, or I'm not sure. And the third one is, in your opinion, in your role, what do you miss? What do you lack? And here you can choose, not choose, you can actually, you have 3 choices, but you can choose one or more if you want to. So the first choice is up-to-date teaching resources. The second choice, if you need sufficient support from faculty. And the third one is effective communication regarding students' progress between faculty and the clinical site. Now, as teachers, there are very challenging situations in many countries. And I'm very curious to see the result of this poll. Now, let's see. Do we have any result coming in, Bruno? Look at that. So the first question is an overwhelming yes. That's good to hear. Are you involved in clinical teaching in the simulated environment? Great to hear that so many of you are working with that, but 25% of you are not. The second question, do you have adequate training to support your simulated teaching? That's a little bit of a more of a balanced response here, with 45% of you saying yes, but 40 no. And some of you are not sure about that. So let's see if the no ones, the ones who have responded no, if you will get some more support by the webinar today. And then we have the third question with what you need, where up-to-date teaching resources takes 70% of what you need. And that for me tells a story that there is a need out there. And Felicity, I really think that based on the webinar that we have today, but also the others together, will help faculty in the best possible way. So with this, thank you very much to all of you who have contributed to the poll. And I'm heading back to you, Felicity.
Thanks, Anna. And you're absolutely right. It's great that so many of you on the call have got clinical experience in the simulated environment. And we really want to support the ongoing resources and provision of additional learning tools and strategies so that we can provide students with really good clinical experiences. And I know that is very challenging in many settings. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker now, and I'm so happy because we are lucky enough to have our first speaker, Bart, who has got not only a student's hat on, but he has also he's a nurse midwife from University of Zambia in Lusaka. He is an alumni of the ICM Young Midwife Leader Program, and he's got considerable experience as a clinical mentor already in emergency obstetric and newborn care, as well as being a clinical instructor to nurses. And he is currently upskilling his midwifery diploma to a Bachelor of Midwifery Science at the University in Zambia. So he's speaking today with his student hat on, and I welcome Bart Kamlu very warmly. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you so much, Felicity. Greetings to everyone on the call today.
But can we start by asking you to tell us what motivated you to become a student again, to upgrade your midwifery education?
Thank you so much, Felicity, for that wonderful question. Building on the previous presentations that have been done on the AIME webinar series, I've heard several times that continuous professional development is necessary and should even become a policy for midwives to be upgrading their knowledge and skills. And so for me, it was more of a story. As you mentioned, I'm a clinical instructor before I came to school. And so I was involved in training of student nurses. And so as a nurse, I felt there was a gap in terms of skills provision, because several times they would come, if they're in antenatal unit, they would ask several questions, maybe how to do the abdominal palpations properly and all that. Yeah, we learn about those things in nursing school, but I as an instructor, as a teacher, I felt inadequate. Like I couldn't really teach the students well. And so I felt the need to go for an upgrade. And luckily the school that I was attached to as a clinical instructor started training midwives. And so they reached out to all their faculty and all the clinical instructors asking for students who would want to upgrade their knowledge and skills. And so that's how I took the opportunity to train as a midwife. And I always say it is the best decision that I ever made, because it helped me gain the necessary skills to train the students better. And also just for to be able to offer better care to the mothers and the babies out there.
And it is absolutely about providing sort of better up-to-date evidence-based care. So it must be very interesting for you, Bart, to have been, an experienced clinician, confident and competent in lots of skills, but then also now to come back to be a student in that sort of hierarchical shift. And I'd really like if you would explain some of the challenges that you think students face in obtaining good quality clinical experiences.
Am I clear now? There's a comment that there was no sound. I hope it's clear.
I think we're okay. If there's any problems, can you please put that in the chat? We did have an interpreter come to support that.
Thank you. So when it comes to challenges, we have two sets of students right now. We have in-service students like me who are coming from work and joining the school again to further your studies. And we also have students who are coming straight from high school or secondary school and who want to become midwives. And so the set of challenges may be different for these two cadres. For instance, we have similar challenges like maybe lack of equipment when it comes to training, because sometimes you want to demonstrate certain procedures in the skills lab before you actually go to the clinical practice, but you'll find maybe there is inadequate equipment to facilitate that process. Also, when it comes to respect, sometimes students complain in the clinical area because you will find maybe there's just any qualified midwife working with students who is asked to maybe supervise the students. But like it has been discussed several times, it is important to have a team built for the institution, by the institution, to facilitate training and teaching of students, such that when they go to the clinical area, I liked the presentation from one of the presenters where she said students get familiar with the preceptor in the skills lab, and as they go to clinical practice, they have that rapport and relationship. But that may be a challenge in some cases and in some facilities and institutions, because this team may not be there. So the lack of trained preceptors, clinical instructors is also one of the challenges which we can put across broadly. Then also when it comes to the curriculum, it was nice to hear that students are consumers of the curriculum development process. And so getting feedback from the students is essential to develop a curriculum that is modern, it's evidence-based, and it offers the components of respect for maternity care so that we can graduate students with the right attitude and the right skill set. And so the curriculum needs to be up to date and something that can offer students that opportunity to learn the current trends out there. And just to add on the curriculum, I think the focus should also be on training midwives who are going to have that employer creation mind, not to graduate and to go out there waiting to be employed. But like the discussion is surrounding the world right now, we need more midwives to set up midwife-led units. And so if you've been trained, well-trained and given the necessary skills, it would be a good platform to take advantage of those skills and trainings to be able to set up your own practice and employ other people. And so the curriculum needs to focus on that as well. For other challenges, some schools, there's still a lack of technology. There are certain schools that use technology and embed it into practice. But in some schools, that may not be the case. I think the use of technology can just end with PowerPoint presentations and Zoom meetings. But I'm sure there are innovative ways around the world that are engaged in terms of training students around the world. And so briefly, those are some of the challenges that I can highlight when it comes to training in the clinical area.
Thanks, Bart. There are lots of little gems there, and I can notice some great messages in the chat. Just to remind everyone, please contribute, and we'd really like to hear your experiences about what's been challenging, some of the challenges that Bart's just shared with us, but also what is enabling, what really enables students. And I like that comment that you remembered that Jyoti, our midwifery educator from Samoa, talked about how the clinical preceptors and the students really did have a relationship. And you can do that in a country that only has 170 midwives. So that's certainly an enabling factor. And I just want to ask you a little bit more to dig deeper about attitudes towards students, because I think students often feel disempowered and anxious or not particularly seen. And I know that you have a little story that I'd love you to share with us about some students who were inspired to go on to do great things. So maybe you'd like to share that, Bart.
Sure thing. Thank you, Felicity. So I believe even students who come from secondary schools, they are not completely blank when it comes to learning. And the issue of respecting students and listening to the students as stakeholders in the training process, I think cannot be overemphasized. And so the type of care and attention that is given to students in training definitely has an impact, and it can reflect on the care that we give to mothers and babies. And so while I was scrolling through social media one day, I found this post about a group of schoolboys who were able to form a football club, that is Tottenham Hotspur, for those who are soccer fans. And so what inspired me from that post was that a group of students saw the need to put up something new, and that innovation that they did was able to be supported by a teacher. One of these Bible school teachers supported those students and groomed them and mentored them. And from that experience, they were able to grow that club into what it is today, and that's 140 years later. But bringing it closer to home as midwives, we all know there was a UN General Assembly last week, and there was a recognition of global change makers. And one of our midwives was recognized there, that is Ashumata from Cameroon. You know, she was recognized for the effort that she's trying to improve the student training. She's written several books about mentorship and internship, how to support students through the training process, and also how she has worked with the community to bring about changes in that community. And so if someone was there to listen to these students, these groups of students, and what they have done, then definitely that support that they received, the mentorship, the support, it has borne fruit to what it is today. And so I believe when the environment is supportive, there's a listening ear to the faculty, and students are engaged to be innovative, definitely they can be able to do something significant.
I love that, to have an engaging ear, because all the midwifery educators on this call, you are the ones with the ears to the students. And I think if we can inspire and motivate our students, they will go on to set up midwifery-led birth centres. They will go on and inspire others. But just we've still got time for a couple of more questions, and I noticed there's one in the chat that I want to come back to. In fact, no, I'll start with that now. It's from educator in the Philippines, just asking whether are there any issues in a country like the Philippines? Being a male midwife is extra challenging. Our culture are not fully accepting of male midwives to provide maternity care. Do you want to speak a little bit to that, Bart? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. It was fascinating to be a male midwife among so many female colleagues at the Congress in Bali, and especially from Indonesia. We had a lot of midwives who wanted to get photos with a lot of us, the male midwives from Africa. And so it was surprising to hear that in other parts of the world, they don't have male midwives. And I think just to talk about the change process, if really a country feels it is necessary to have a male midwife, then they can follow the steps of the change model that talks about creating that agency, the discussion, and putting together a coalition of stakeholders to be able to create that vision for that country. Because even for us, I think it started small. When I was training as a midwife, we were just the two of us in class, 2 males, and we had 19 female students. And even at Bachelor of Science level, we are very few men compared to the female folk. So the number of men in the profession.
Okay, we might have lost Bart momentarily.
Is
such
too
an interesting
small, but it has to do with what the country desires to have. In our setup, sometimes some female clients prefer male midwives. And so I think that sort of creates the demand to say, we also need men to be trained as midwives. And it shouldn't be looked as if it's a bad thing, because we have male obstetricians, but sometimes clients find it easy to seek medical or obstetric care to a male obstetrician, but they may find it strange to seek care to some male midwife. But it's slowly changing. Some people, they have no problem with it. But in rural areas where there's deep root for traditional beliefs, there are some traditional leaders who may find it a problem for midwives to work in their community and deliver women. But with advocacy, sensitization, usually there's some change noted in that area as well. So we joked with the midwives in Indonesia to say, actually, if you need male midwives, you can always call on us. We can come and start beefing in the manpower as we change the landscape there.
That's wonderful, Bart, and I'm sure you're very much appreciated when you care for women. One more question, just to finish off, and also Chisato, I'm going to ask you to pop in the chat the link. Bart has also written 2 midwifery textbooks, which is phenomenal. Not many students do that, Bart. So talk about being inspiring. So Chisato is going to put these books in the chat. Do you want to just speak briefly about those, Bart?
Yes, please, Felicity. So, talking about the books, I mentioned that I've been a clinical instructor for a while, I think for over 10 years now. And so I've sort of participated in a lot of development of resources when it comes to student training. And so I thought, from the words of my mentor, I think she's on the call as well. She's now a doctor there in Australia. So she used to say that you need to aspire to inspire before you expire. So those words, they always encourage me to say, what difference can I contribute from wherever I am? And so as a clinical instructor, I felt it's not automatic for students to get to know the things that we know when we practice for some time. And so for the first book, for the clinical experiences, it was just meant to share quick tips to students who are just starting their profession on what they should expect in the profession, what they should expect when they go for clinical practice, more like a guide to just show them to say, when you go for the clinical area, you need to have your resources in hand. You need to know your patients. You need to, do those things. And then when it comes to the midwifery book, we usually use a lot of international resources locally, and we don't have a lot of in-house authors when it comes to midwifery books. And so after becoming a young midwife leader for ICM, I thought of documenting just that process. But when I submitted the first manuscript to the reviewers, they actually said, we don't have a lot of books on midwifery in Zambia. Would you mind just building upon it, building upon your story so that you can write something about midwifery? And so that's how the applied midwifery came about. It is meant to highlight that when you learn the skills and you are trained as a midwife, there are so many opportunities out there to practice and to engage. You can become a writer, you can become a teacher, you can become a community midwife, you can do research and administrative work. And so the applied midwifery book sort of highlights the opportunities that are there in midwifery, and also highlight aspects of my professional journey as a midwife, just to leave something for the profession. And it's open for reviews, and those who manage to review it, you are welcome to contribute to it so that we can build that resource, and maybe we'll be able to use it locally. And it would be good to have a local reference material. Yeah, briefly, that's it about the book.
What wonderful resources. Imagine being a student and having that sort of guide before you start, just what your expectations. I think that's so useful. And yes, I think Chisato will share it. But I love that quote, you need to aspire to inspire before you expire. Oh, I think that's lovely. But we've got one more minute. I just love you to finish, because you've been so inspiring and so positive about, what, and I would actually really appreciate it if those on the call would put this also in the chat to share. What do you love about working with students? I know you are a student, but I know you also teach students. So what do you love most about working with students? So, and also please, everyone, feel free to share.
Thank you so much. I'm clear now. Okay, so the one thing I enjoy about working with students is it's so fulfilling to be able to impart a certain knowledge and skill in someone who didn't know. When we work for some time in the profession, we take it for granted, like I can just check vital signs. But for someone who's just starting their career, they don't know how to take temperature. They don't know how to check the pulse, the BP. And so when you really take the time to learn the steps on what it takes to train a student, then you'll be able to have that satisfaction knowing that you are contributing to the output, the cadre that you are producing. And so for the various innovations that I've seen in the profession right now, like interprofessional education, where we are learning with different cadres, we are learning with nurses, we are learning with doctors when we're in the clinical area. it sort of gives you a certain level of confidence. I actually enjoy it myself when I'm with medical students, and they come so close. They want to see what you're doing, how you are palpating a woman, and they're asking questions. How are you plotting the pathograph? It sort of gives you a confidence to say, if I know these things, I can be able to teach others and not just people from within my circle. And so hoping as we go on in the development of midwifery as a profession, we'll be able to strengthen such opportunities for learning and training, so that if, for example, you give a midwife who is a preceptor, you give them the opportunity to train medical students, it also boosts their confidence and their morale, because they have to learn, they have to develop themselves to be able to teach better. And so that's one of the highlights when it comes to teaching. And most of all, when they graduate and then they call you to say, you were tough on me when I was a student because you really wanted the best from me. Right now, I can testify that the knowledge and the skills that you gave me are really helpful, and I am a better nurse or better midwife because of what you did. I think there's no better feeling than that.
Sorry, I couldn't get my button. That was wonderful, and there's so many things I want to say to that. There's lots of things in the chat about male midwives and what countries are doing and how they really believe they should strongly, ICM should advocate for male midwives. I also want to say I think it's great that your second book is giving examples of what the midwifery profession, how broad it can be. I think sometimes as students, we just think, oh my gosh, we've got to get all our competencies and then we're just going to sit in our little labour ward or postnatal ward and that'll be it. But to actually, as students, to see that diverse pathway that is available and encourages them to stretch themselves professionally is great to get that as a student. But thank you. You've been so inspiring. I can see all these wonderful comments. We will come back to you at the end. Sato, will you share the book? Have you already shared that book link? Oh, you have. Great. I missed it. Thank you. Thank you, Bart. And I will hand over to Anna now, and we'll come back to you at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bart. And thank you so much, Felicity. When I'm listening to you, Bart, I'm thinking back on my own time as a student back in the days. And I will never forget neither the teachers nor the clinical preceptors who led me into the midwifery philosophy of care. And they have meant so much to me. I still remember them vividly. So not only you, but also all of you on this webinar who work and function as clinical preceptors, you do play a huge role to the midwife students out there for sure. You form their future. So thank you for sharing. And I will have a cup of tea with you, Felicity, to ask about your time as a midwife student back in the days.
I remember crying. I just want to say to all those educators out there, be nice to your students, and I'm sure you are. But, it can be quite a traumatic experience being a student, so I do remember that. Good
to hear. Thank you, Felicity. Now, please allow me to introduce my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Smita. She works with me at Lärdal from Lärdal Global Health, and Smita is an education and implementation manager. She has a lot of experience in design and implementation of simulation-based education all over the world. Asmita is from Nepal and has worked very, very much in Nepal with the government and partners in strengthening the midwifery education in Nepal. And I see that we have a lot of participants into this webinar from Nepal. So congratulations already on behalf of all of us to what you're doing in Nepal. I will have 3 questions for Asmita. Are you with me?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Anna.
Excellent. Excellent. I will have 3 questions for you. And the first one is that your amazing experience from the Southeast Asia region and in your work that you have done for a lot of years, actually, over 5 years, recognizing that it takes time. What are the challenges that you see in midwifery education today? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and greetings to everyone joining the webinar today. As Anna shares, it's really nice to see familiar names and greetings to everyone. So one of the major challenge that we see is implementing competency-based education, because the focus has been on the knowledge acquisition, and there is very less time for hands-on skills and behavior practice. This also relates to the curriculum itself, as it is heavily focused mostly on the theoretical aspects. And there is not enough time for hands-on practice that is really required for the students to achieve the competencies. So when they're going for clinical practice, they're not fully prepared in all the competencies, not on the knowledge aspect mostly, but mostly on the skills and the behavior aspect. Also, one, encouraging the students to reflect and develop their decision-making, critical thinking skills. And second, simulation-based team practice. One, among the midwifery students themselves, but also between the different professions. So the interprofessional team training is also limited. It was very nice to hear from our previous speaker, Bart, on how he shared his experiences on working with his medical colleagues as well. However, most of the challenges is definitely interlinked with the previous webinars that we have which have covered the different topics, and with the capacity of the faculty around implementing simulation-based education. So in the current scenario where we need such high midwives globally, there's always a challenge of this faculty-student ratio as well. So it is very important that the faculty rethink. I really like the word rethink this time in this particular section of the framework, where we are trying to encourage the faculty to rethink the way they teach midwifery and build in innovative ways, focusing on the different domains around competency-based education, like the skills proficiency, the decision-making part, the simulation-based practice part, ultimately to develop confident and competent midwives. Yeah, so I think these are the few of the challenges.
Thank you, Asmita, and I completely agree with you. When seeing the circle of learning that is up on the screen right now, seeing also that competency-based education is the future to actually educate competent and confident midwives, it makes sense 100% that it all is connected in so many different ways.
Yes.
And if one of these blocks are not there, we're not going to get that competent and confident midwife at the end of the program, serving for women and then newborns when they are graduated. So thank you for sharing that. I also like the word rethink. I love it. I think
Yes.
it's really opening up for the future. So that's also something that we should discuss much more. So leading into the opportunities, Asmita, and based on your experience from Nepal and many other countries, what do you feel are the opportunities we have in rethinking, focusing not only on students, but definitely also on the faculty?
Yes,
Over
yeah.
to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So I think one of the most important aspects is keeping the student in the center, and creating that safe learning environment for the student that gives the flexibility for the students to achieve their competencies. Peer-to-peer learning is one of the learning strategies that we have been implementing, where faculty definitely provide standard guidelines and checklists to the students. However, the students can practice as an individual with their peer in the time that they require to achieve that particular competency. So what happens through this is, one, they are able to learn at their own pace, because all of us learn differently and we have our own pace of learning. It also provides opportunity for practicing their skills and behavior multiple times. So through the low dose, high frequency approach. And during this process, if we are able to provide them data and feedback, so it would self-guide them and they could self-monitor their progress over time. So in a way, this empowers the students, however, at the same time allows the faculty to have spend less time in building those competencies for the students. I think the other aspect is simulation-based trainings, where the focus is on the reflection-based experiential learning and providing the opportunities for the students to reflect, through the guided debriefings, not in a judgmental way, but in a non-judgmental way, allowing them to reflect through these debriefings. And these simulation sessions could be done in a simulation lab setup, but it could also be in situ in a clinical environment with limited resources. Like often when you take the word simulation, we're often thinking technology, but it's really not about the technology, but it's the technique that allows reflection for the students and learn through those reflection. So I think these educational strategies, if we are able to train our faculty on these different methodologies, then definitely it would enhance and support in enhancing the competencies of the students. And also, which we talked about, interprofessional team training. So if we're able to do that in a simulated environment, so we are not only enhancing the technical skills, but also the non-technical skills like behavioral changes, communication, leadership, which is very crucial in midwifery education. Yeah.
Thank you, Asmita. I really like what you're saying. Having worked a lot with midwifery education and midwives newly graduated, the midwifery profession is an autonomous profession where you need to do a lot of decision-making working as a midwife. And that needs to be embedded already in the education part. So the whole reflection of what you actually are doing, also the decision making, and that is strongly connected to the interdisciplinary training. I see that we do have some members from Lao PDR and Bangladesh, where we worked a lot on how to, in an early stage of the education, to let students from other professions, such as nurses and doctors, actually try to do some kind of simulation together or some lectures together or something, so that they get intertwined a little bit with each other as they will then meet and work together after graduation. So I think there are a lot of good ideas that could actually help both the decision making, the reflection, and the interprofessional collaboration for the women when they are working in the clinics. Super nice to hear, Asmita. Now, finally, would you be able to share some examples from your from the educational methodologies that you now have been talking about and how you have implemented that in Nepal? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. So in Nepal, we focused more on the faculty in the beginning. So trained the faculty on the different methodologies of teaching and training, which the circle that you saw as the first slide, where knowledge was definitely a part of it, but more of focusing on the skills proficiency component, the decision-making component, and training on simulation-based educations. So I see like a few colleagues here, Dr. Kiran, the founder president of Midwifery Society of Nepal and all. So we were able to build in their strengths and capacity so that they are able to start implementing it among their students. So these are a few of the pictures from the midwifery students undergoing Bachelor in Midwifery course at the National Academy of Medical Sciences in Kathmandu. and where they are having skills practice in a simulated environment. And the other picture that you see is of a midwifery-led center where the students are applying their skills in the clinical practice. So it's this training them in a way where they're able to transfer their knowledge and apply it in the clinical practice is one of the ways that we did for our faculty and the students in Nepal. And I would like to share one of the quote from the faculty at NAMS, Jyoti Betwal, where she shares that after undergoing the simulation-based training, what she realized is, what I've learned is what she says is that it's not about me teaching my students, but it's about creating that conducive environment which meets their needs. And if this is done, then they will learn automatically better. So I really love what she shares and just wanted to share it with everyone here. Yeah.
That's amazing, Asmita. I completely see the beauty of that statement. Thank you so very much for sharing. And again, great work that has actually grown beyond midwifery in Nepal, which is amazing. So that is very good. I see a lot of good comments here. Felicity, how are we doing in time? Over to you.
Oh, we're good. We've got another 10 minutes. It's very stimulating reading these comments. I'm trying to choose which ones we can speak to. It's really interesting hearing, and Bart, you started this thread of conversation around that intercollaboration, how we need to include nurses and student doctors, and particularly student doctors, because as we know, there's an obstetric model and philosophy of midwifery or of maternity care, and then there's a midwifery model, and often there's a disconnect. And so if we can incorporate our midwifery training with also training our colleagues, our medical colleagues, then we get that lovely cross-pollination of skills, and because we need each other. We want to be on the same page, and it's lovely to hear that. So I'm open to the midwives on the call to maybe share some ways that they are doing it, how they are using that intercollaboration and multidisciplinary clinical training, if there's a sort of a cross-pollination that's going on. I noticed one comment from Morocco that it was difficult. They didn't have a lot of clinical, I'm assuming clinical simulation sites in the faculty, because judging from that poll at the beginning, Anna, there's a significant lack of resources in many faculty for educators to be able to properly teach clinical competency. Shisato, is there anything that you think stands out to you that needs to be, or Bart?
Yeah. Okay, Anna, you can go ahead.
You go on first, please.
Go, Bart.
For me, I wanted to say that I was actually reading through the comments, and it was interesting to note that some of the problems are almost universal, like the issue of minimal supervision, because the same midwife who's on duty also has to double in as a preceptor or as a supervisor, sort of limits time given to students for supervision. Also, I think for interprofessional development, there are certain programs, for example, that is being done by my university, that they are combining certain activities that are done by students within the university. So if there is, for example, community-based outreach, they are able to mix midwives, nurses, lab technicians, and everybody, like sort of building the same components that you find in a hospital after training. So it starts from within the school. And if that culture is built within the school, it's easy to adapt when you graduate and you go into society.
Can I also comment a little bit, Felicity, that in Bangladesh, there are some good work ongoing in actually training cross-professional nurses and doctors and midwives together. So I will actually refer to UNFPA in Bangladesh for the work that they do there with interprofessional training. But I would also like to challenge, because there is a lot of discussions around cross-professional training at a global level, but I would like to see so much more, and I think we would benefit so much more from doing it at a country level. So I'm actually challenging everyone to look into this a little bit and see how you individually and as a school or as a clinic can foster interprofessional training together. There are excellent examples that we can share, but also using your own imagination and real cases of where doctors and midwives work together. Because at the end of the day, when we manage a shoulder dystocia, when we manage a newborn resuscitation, we're working together, and we need to do it respectfully, and we need to do it in a competent way. So I'm really challenging everyone to think about that a little bit. Over to you, Felicity.
Thanks, Anna. I'm going to throw in a challenge too, because I want to really highlight what Rondi has made an excellent point about the sort of the gaps in the WHO, or not the gaps in WHO, but in our clinical care. Like, there's still people are not able to have companions of choice. People are not having skin to skin. People are still lying on their backs. I mean, these are basic sort of midwifery principles. So how do we improve that? Where are the gaps? How do we get those really basic messages? And I think we need to allow women to have a birth companion of their choice. I think that's fundamental for her experience, and that really worries me that countries or institutions are still not allowing that. So that's my challenge.
So I think just to contribute to the same, the challenge is also with the leadership. I've encountered leaders or supervisors of units who will scream at you if you don't do skin to skin, or who will scream at you because you are not practicing respectful maternity care. Some in charges, they'll just ask you to say, what are you rushing for? What is the problem with leaving the baby on the mother after delivery? There's a lot of human resource here in terms of students, a lot of supervisors. So what are you rushing for? Why are you quickly whisking the baby away? So let the mother and the baby bond. Let's promote delayed cord clamping and just practice. So if we have that kind of a leader who is sensitized and knowledgeable about the evidence currently, they're able to push it on their staff, and they're able to encourage the students to do the right thing. Yeah, so I've encountered leaders like that also.
And that really speaks to the 7 steps, doesn't it? It starts with leadership. That's, you know, when we think back to our first session with Pandora, it's all about leadership and moving forward, and then advocacy with Farida and faculty building capacity. So the 7 steps continue and cycle, rotate. I think we've got time for one more comment. Asmita or Bart, do you want to share your last little tips about how to sort of make the clinical experience the most positive for students? In 1 minute?
Yes, yeah, sure. So I think it's as I mentioned before as well, focusing on the students, their learning experience. So we each are students, but have we really analyzed what they have learned? Is what I often ask myself. So like when you say 1 minute, I think, yes, definitely the teaching part, but the overall learning journey itself. So if we are able to focus on the overall learning journey of the students, then tomorrow when they go for clinical practice, they are not only competent on their skills, but they're a different person in itself. You know, when we implement simulation programs, we have heard that it has not changed me in my clinical skills, but it has changed me as a person. I debrief in my everyday life as well, which I apply as a skill for me to solve any complexities, you know. So I think these are the few things, if we are able to provide to our students and make the learning journey very, very enjoyable, as you shared that yours was, you had different experiences. So if we're able to give that experience to our students, then the end result that we get is the impact that we are able to create in the overall clinical outcomes is going to be immense. Yeah.
Well said. Beautifully said. And Bart, a closing comment from you.
Thank you, Asmita, for highlighting those important aspects. For me, I also feel it's important for students to be supported. Like, the issue of mentorship cannot be emphasized. And from the many comments that I've seen on the group, it's like there should be extra training for people to supervise and train students. So the preceptorship training, the support is very vital for anyone who's interested to teach students, so that we can pass on the right knowledge, the skills, and as well as the attitudes. And there's always that question that is always asked to say, would you want the student you're training take care of you when you are the one who is in labor? So the type of students we would want to take care of us, then we should be able to put in the input, the effort to be able to produce that kind of a student. And also, we need to use technology, because we're in a technological age. So let's embrace technology and find better ways to supervise students, to monitor their progress, and just to track their progress for feedback purposes.
Thank you, Bart. And you're right, we need to use technology. And in fact, in the resource slide or in the chat, I think Shisato has put some really good resources from Lardell, from Japaigo. There's a whole lot of safe birth. I think you'll see those. So so Anna and I just sat today and talking about this, and these are really our 3 takeaway points. Was that, as Bart said, we really need to embrace those innovative and engaging teaching strategies and technology if we can. And that whole concept of blended learning, I think we're much better at that in a way, thanks to COVID. And again, to collaborate with a wide range of stakeholders, and that includes our obstetric colleagues. We want to achieve that real global consistency in midwifery education, and to bring all countries up to that high standard. And as it's been mentioned today really beautifully, it's not just about being competent in your skills and understanding, it's about your attitude and your behaviours and the way you approach women and respect each other as colleagues. And it's lovely to hear, Bart, that you've had so much respect come your way from just by virtue of being a male midwife, or not just by being the virtue of a male midwife, but that you have enhanced the care for women, and enhanced the concept that we need more male, empathetic, kind, caring midwives. So thank you, Bruna. A reminder that we have our very final one in 2 weeks' time, and we're a bit sad about this because it's been so lovely to join everyone every 2 weeks, but we have an amazing roll-up next time. We've got Fran McConville from WHO, we've got Geeta Lal from UNFPA, we've got a wonderful midwifery educator, Garissi from Tunisia, and we have a secret someone who's going to come on. I'm not telling you, it's a surprise. So please come to our final webinar when we wrap up this series. And we thank you once again for your attention and your enthusiasm and the wonderful work that you do out in the world. And thank you to Bart, Asmita, Anna, Shisato, Bruna, and our lovely interpreters. Go well, everyone, and look after yourselves. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a blessed day, evening.
Thank you, everyone.